Welcome to Heart, where we break the silence, bridge the gaps, and bring real conversations about mental health to the forefront. I'm your host, Lee Yaffe, founder and director of The Long Short Road. Hi, Mendel. Welcome to Heart.
Thank you, Lay. Excited to be here.
Excited to be here with you. I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself in your own words to the audience, please.
Sure. I'm Mendel Toron. Um, yeah. How would I introduce myself? I guess professionally,
Yeah.
I would say that I am a trauma therapist, a psychotherapist, curious and passionate about deeper things, the subconscious, how different things impact us. I I'm also the owner of a group practice, so we have four therapists now and a new supervisor that just joined. And our focus is under this umbrella of trauma therapy. So not just being trauma informed, but trauma trained. And so everybody in our practice is EMDR trained and going to be certified, as well as being supervised by an IFS, uh, and potentially being able to do that as well. So that's professionally. Personally, I'm just curious. I'm a student. I like to say that like each of the previous levels of whatever I'm doing. So I was a student. I continue to be a student. Um, I was a beginner therapist, so I continue to be a beginner therapist. To continue to be curious and open about what I can learn. And as I'm becoming and moving more into leadership, I guess you could say I'm a supervisor and working more in towards that leadership piece as well.
Love that. Thanks for giving us that holistic view. I love that. So then let's get into it. What led you to, like, what inspired you to specifically focus on trauma therapy as your life's work? Like, you're the owner of the practice, you are a therapist. Like, what drew you to this?
Well, there's the practical and then there's the deeper, right? And then I'm not going to go too macro as to why I became a therapist, although I could say I'm an emotionally sensitive individual who found a lot of healing in doing my own healing work. And I didn't always know I would be that. I kind of stumbled into it, um, as I did with trauma healing. I would say that it pulled me as opposed to me running to it. Uh, I started my internship at St. Joseph Orphanage, which was a mental health center focusing on mostly trauma with families, so, and then also individuals. And yeah, just working there. And I had the training I had as a student, and it was in cognitive behavioral therapies and dialectical behavioral therapies and at some point I found that I couldn't get past the different parts of my clients and the aspects of them. In fact, I found that I was triggering them and potentially even creating more harm
Oh,
accidentally. Um, and so I was looking into other trainings. I stumbled upon EMDR
wow.
as, yeah, my own therapist wanted me to try it. I said, absolutely not. I'm not going to try that weird eye movement thing. But I'll try a training and maybe if I know it, then maybe I'll feel safe enough to try it. As you'll learn about me. So I went and got the training. Uh, it was very life-changing, surprisingly life-changing, and very impactful, very meaningful experience. Just the training itself, and then yeah, and then yeah, going into therapy, my own EMDR therapy, and yeah, I just kind of went full force and yeah, got certified. I'm a consultant now. And it's so funny because I've been trained in other things, somatic therapy, wonderful therapy, parts work and hypnosis and some other therapies. And it's just somehow I always end up at EMDR.
Mm.
It's always been the most efficient for me. And yeah, so I kind of just stumbled in through that way and I've been able to help people, maybe not from like your crisis response per se lens or in that typical trauma lens, and more like in the way of, okay, how do I use these modalities of trauma healing to help people live their best lives. Of
Mhm.
course, we want to help them heal, but then like, how else could we use these things that seem to be so powerful?
Right.
So I've been interested in that.
Wow, that's beautiful. And so, as I'm hearing this, and then one piece that you shared is that you were initially resistant to the more, I mean, it's a different approach, right? Like
Yeah.
cognitive behavioral therapy and EMDR, like worlds apart. I feel very often when I speak to people that there's still this we have this lens and this perspective that like therapy is CBT and DBT, and that's what we do, and that's what's supposed to help. But it sounds like you were hearing that that was not the case. And I wonder, like, how can we uh, help people feel more comfortable with like adventuring out into the unknown of the other types of modalities, you know?
Yeah. It's the same question that we would ask of how we can get people to venture out into the unknown of therapy in the first place.
Right.
It's the same question, and I've found an interesting, like a recent trauma training where it spoke about this idea of phobias, that we can have a phobia of our internal experience.
Sure.
And I found that to be a helpful frame for people not wanting to come into therapy and people who have done talk therapy and it's helped them and they feel like, okay, but now it's like a year, 2 years, like, wow, that's a long time. And maybe I'm wanting to actually do something a little bit more intentional. And good CBT and good DBT are life-changing. And perhaps they wanted to do something that's deeper. And I'm just going to say it like that. Um, and so, and maybe a little bit more difficult.
Right.
So it takes somewhat of a risk, and people find me on purpose.
Yeah.
They find me on purpose. They usually seek me out. Sometimes they stumble in.
Right.
Um, but usually it's somebody wanting to go to that next level. And I think you do have to be a little bit called to it. You have to either be struggling enough that it just hasn't helped, or you just in your soul, you know there's something more um, than just the cognitive
Right.
that must be on the emotive and perhaps even on the unconscious and eventually the spiritual level as well.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
so all these therapies.
Oh, right. But I appreciate framing that also from the perspective of phobias, that like we can be very afraid of our internal experiences, and then that may be the reason why people don't, you know, get past scratching the surface of what they're experiencing to begin with. Like maybe it's just too scary, which like I just want to honor that because it is frightening.
It is frightening and it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Our phobias are beautiful. Our addictions, all of our symptoms are beautiful and are perfectly there to keep us safe and have helped us.
Mm.
Honoring our resistance towards what would have hurt us or been overwhelming if we
Right.
would do it outside the space of therapy makes complete sense.
Yeah.
That would have been, I don't want you to do that. If the pain is so great, you should do that in a safe container.
Right.
Um, so I just want to validate that.
Yeah. And can we talk for a moment deeper on that idea of our addictions and our pain keeping us safe? Because I think that might be like a mind-blowing idea to someone who's listening right now. Like I can imagine there's someone I'm hearing that and I have tears in my eyes and I've heard that a million times and it's still like so brings home to me that piece of like honoring all of us ourselves. For someone who's never heard that before, can we like break that down a little bit more?
Sure. Again, it's the way that I've seen it and obviously learned and read about it, but this is how I've come to frame it is that we have different symptoms that are the first layer, um, and they're all there to protect us. Sometimes it's distracting us, preventing us, but in the beautiful way, we say your neurosis uh, is your I forget the line itself, but your neurosis is beautiful, basically, and that it's the exact thing that allows you to be able to live semi-functionally
Right.
in a world, first off, that could be is sick. Forget about it. And even if it was normal,
Right.
based off of your early experiences. And so these the way that you've been able to prevent yourself having to be triggered, like a phobia is a prevention of having to be triggered.
Right.
Um, Other symptoms like addictions or I'm just going to go bold here, eating disorders, uh, over-attachment to unhealthy people,
Hmm.
uh, food. Yeah, I guess food would be related to that. OCD is similar to the phobias in the way that the we get so dysregulated, overwhelmed that we go right to the OCD is kind of like an exaggerated version of our symptoms. That's not to say that that's the only we need to heal OCD and the symptom itself, but that these things are the first layer of the healing process. And we recognize and we appreciate them, and then we start to work with them. Even if we do abstinence for addiction,
Right.
uh, it's so that we can start to remove that layer and work on what's underneath, what's the feelings underneath it.
Right. It's a beautiful way
That
of.
makes
Yeah, no, it makes total sense. And just something that I'm thinking about is, a lot of times what I'm hearing from people is so the opposite of that, that we look at the neuroses, we look at the addiction, we look at the symptoms as problematic. They need to be attacked. We need to be aggressive about them. And it's like, no, it's the opposite. Actually, we have to like hold loving space for those, right? Like, I know that Gabor Mate is whatever post October 7th, it's hard to quote him, but he does have that quote, ask not why the addiction, ask why the pain. And if we could like look at those parts of ourselves with loving kindness and compassion, but it's just, I've heard so many people that, part of their challenge is also the way that they're addressing what they're struggling with, right? So if it's addiction or if it's depression or if it's suicidality, there's like a sense of it being something they need to attack and get rid of rather than something they need to honor and hold space for so that they can peel back that layer. Does that make
yeah.
sense?
Yeah, 100%. And I'll say to somebody in therapy, like, yeah, we need to address this addiction. We need to address this thing so we can get to the main point.
Right.
It's not to say that addiction isn't important, but as you start to heal these parts, and they may always be that's your thing, that's your struggle,
Right.
the addiction, the OCD. You may always have some aspect of it. It's always like we have to be mindful of it. But then if we can just work with that symptom so we can actually get what's underneath, then that's where you're going to get the reward,
Right.
and that's where you're going to feel the healing, or that's where you're going to like look back and be like, oh, we got to the point.
Mm, mm, mm. And as we're talking about it, I think when we talk about therapy, it kind of feels like very linear, and I don't think that the therapeutic journey is linear. But do you find that when people come into therapy, they have this certain conception that like it's going to take a certain amount of time and it's going to go a certain way, and we're going to hit ABC marker by certain time, and I will feel healed by this date? Or like, do you find that there are those kinds of misconceptions when people come into a therapeutic process, journey?
I'm going to try to answer the question as in my own way. Someone
Okay.
asks a question and then I'll answer it how I will.
Okay.
Uh,
By all means. That's
yeah.
for.
No, because people are so different, I want to answer it on a more global level,
Okay.
but also try to be specific at the same time and try to do opposites here. Um, a lot of people come in very specific and very like A, B, C, D. Other people come in completely bewildered and have no objection, goal at all. And so we might say, do we need to help someone create a goal, or do we need to help them to focus less on get stuck so much on the end goal?
Mm,
So two opposite types of people.
right,
The answer is we need a goal, we need an objective, and then we have to realize that the point is the process.
right,
No healing is done if we're over attached to outcome.
right,
We will try to shortcut and we will skip over something important when we're stuck attached to the outcome.
right.
And so, but you need some sort of goal or outcome.
Sure.
You don't want to just be
Right,
lost in your
right,
floating of process. You can see that people get lost in that and they're over obsessed with process with
Right.
no focus on goal or outcome. So we need to have both, like
Right.
anything.
Right. As you know, as you were saying, this shortcut cut piece, I go right the long short road and the idea in Hasidus
Oh,
of
there you
not
go.
right. Like that's also the name of the organization. But like, I as I'm thinking about it, it's true that you have to have you have to have a goal in mind. But then you also have to have, what they call in like the mindfulness community, like a beginner's mindset, that you have something that you're connected to, but not overly attached because the outcome is, when if I could take myself an example, I entered therapy for a very specific reason. What ended up coming out of that had nothing to do with why I went in the first place. So it just, you have to be connected but flexible.
Set a goal.
Right.
Don't get stuck on the time. I do this in my business. I set a goal. I don't get stuck on the time
Yeah.
constraint exactly. Oh, 3 months, a year, 2 years, I don't know, but this goal is
Right.
important to me.
Right.
And then it's the same thing with becoming a therapist. I had an arbitrary goal. And those goals are long gone. And you start to do a new goal. And then I don't know how long, but I do know I'm going to work towards it. And I trust myself enough and I trust the process enough that I know that eventually I will get there in the right time.
Right.
And that's taken me time to uh,
I
get
was gonna
to
say, just what you described there, I was like, how many years of self-work did that take, Mendel?
uh, 10.
Right. Right. I think it's that feeling of being
Well,
12. Okay. There you go. There you go. So for anyone who's listening, it's like, right, Mendel could do it because he's a therapist. I'm like, no, human also, right? So it is, yeah, it is very, I think that's just there's like being human is messy. And when you are trying to uncover layers of yourself, it's gonna, I don't know.
we're
You have,
holding opposites.
yeah,
That's the language I've used. We're holding opposites. We're doing complex things, multiple layers at the same time,
yeah,
different levels of consciousness, different parts of you, all at the same time.
yeah.
It
It,
might be a slip up.
yeah, no kidding. Right. Right. No, for sure. For sure. What has being a therapist taught you about what it means to be human?
Being a therapist has forced me to confront all of my inner demons or inner pain.
Mm.
It's forced me to see my judgments and watch them be called out.
Yeah,
Um, to be able to see with my highly traumatized clients, even a micro smile being misperceived as mockery
yeah,
or a micro uh, mishap as something that I can both understand that that might be an overreaction on the client's end, but also within myself, was there something that felt uh, patronizing, or was there something that I can learn about myself and what it means, yeah, to be human? And for my own process, it's been about growing personally and uh, systemically. So, how do I look at systems? Working in systems as a therapist, leaving the systems, creating my own, and being able and if we're talking now in my work, right, what is Mendel working through right now is how I felt about leadership, what it means to be stepping into being a leader role, identifying as a leader, identifying as a supervisor, as opposed to, oh, I'm not really that. I just also do that. And then being able to own that and try to do it differently.
wow.
So that feels human.
It really like forces you to step up then because, when you're hold in that like holding the space and being able to do and work all of the magic in the room with the client is a beautiful thing. And also that it translates into your life that you're able to also like show up differently. I think that's, I don't know, it's pretty empowering. It empowers me. Thank you. But also like, yeah, could we just like talk about that for a second, that being in the helping space, how much it forces you to confront your own. Like, and I'm saying this because I feel like not everyone uh, does. Do you know what I mean? That like you could have that professional stance and also have it be so far removed from what's happening in your personal life. And it really, like, when I can only speak for myself, but I know that being in this line of work has forced me to level up in ways that have also, you know, made me have to look at things that I did not want to look at.
Yeah,
And you could choose to say, nope, I'm not looking at that. I'm in this for the sake of other people. But I don't know. It's hard.
100%.
Being human is so hard.
It is hard. Life is hard
Yeah.
and healing is hard and
Yeah.
pick your heart.
Right.
And I don't mean that to be tough and overly tough in a weird, unhealthy way. But when people ask me, how do I become a better therapist? Okay, this is gonna sound really tough. I say all you have to do is grow up.
Yeah.
And then, whoa, that sounds like, yeah, just grow the bleep up. And I know that sounds like that sounds like the
No,
toxic guy
I
on
bring it on.
Instagram.
Bring it on.
But in that part of you, whatever that part is, when that part grows up, it'll be a heck of a lot easier. And it won't be as overwhelming and dysregulating for you
Right.
doing whatever X thing is as we grow into it. Um, yeah, you were saying something though that was important about healing, helping professionals. And I was thinking about this idea of being forced to confront intimacy,
Mm,
being forced to to deepen and be more honest and direct and specific in my relationships and in my work. If you are cerebral and vague with a client, uh, I'll say very recently, a client was telling me right before this, not without any identifying information, um, what might feel patronizing as a therapist, but also as a husband. Um, how when we speak vague and we're not
yeah.
specific with our vulnerability, it can come off as distant. Oh, even narcissistic is really probably the word. And I've had to been forced to confront being specific, being more honest, being more genuine. Not because I shouldn't be a hypocrite, although I shouldn't be, but because it won't be received the same way. Somehow the client will feel dysregulated. They'll feel that they're getting opposites thrown at them. He's telling me a truth, but I don't feel a truth. I don't know why. They feel it, and the clients know.
Yeah.
And so it helps people to be able to receive me better
Yeah.
when I work on myself.
Mm, yeah. It's a good reminder for me. Thank you. I needed to hear that today. It's like, because and I think that's one of the interesting, you know, one of the things that I have noticed that has come up for me over time, of being in crisis management and doing suicide prevention, is that people are like, people will assume that I kind of have all the skills that I'm supporting other people to learn, that I kind of have them, you know, that I'm good, I'm doing them. I'm like, no, I get dysregulated. I yell at my kids. Like I doom scroll when I'm stressed out. Like we're all human. But like just remembering that like the helping professionals are growing alongside, maybe not alongside their clients, but on a parallel track, because hopefully the goal is that we're all growing and all changing. And that also impacts our relationships for the positive when we are able to make those changes.
Yeah, we're definitely human. We sometimes compartmentalize if we need to,
Yeah,
so that we can show up in the best way. Although that's not the best way. That's second best.
right,
Best is fully showing up.
right.
And I guess for me, like the healing, and I'm sure you've heard this, is like a spiral. And
Yes,
maybe you have. And so when you're down, I meet you at your down. It's a
right,
different down. But and our up is a similar up, but it's wider. And it's
right,
not to say that where I'm holding is higher than someone else, because some clients might come in ahead of me. And it's not about better or worse. I will say there are different levels of like healing and consciousness and stages. There's a difference between someone feeling sick versus somebody who's trying to work towards enhancing and growth.
right.
It really is a different ex area. And when I'm working with a client, I do have to honor where they are showing up on this continuum and not trying to pretend everybody's here, everybody's there. And
Right.
so, yeah, there are levels. Yeah, there is developmental stages, and there are even consciousness stages of healing and growth. And yeah, I think that's really important. It's not, I don't want to deny reality.
Right. No, and I think that's an important piece also is like meeting the client where they're at. Right? Like it's different if a client is coming in and what they want is like, to better and they're feeling good and want to enhance how they're, to add more meaning to their life versus like they're you know, right now they're in such an intense state of depression that even getting out of bed and brushing their teeth feels impossible. So then talking to them about meaningful goals feels so like it's so not helpful. Like, oh, you're struggling to get out of bed. Let's talk about like all the meaning making you're gonna do. It's, like
Let's
that.
talk about peak experience.
No, 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 please. And sometimes I'll tell people like you have to meet someone where they're at. And that could be it's a very scary, vulnerable place. I'm asking you to like essentially get down into the tunnel with the person and sit next to them in this dark tunnel and be like, "Hi, I'm here with you." And I'm not even going to turn the light on right now. I'm just going to hold the flashlight in my hand. But like it's here when you're ready for it. And I think we try to not even just professionally, I think interpersonally in our regular relationships, we try to circumvent that discomfort because it is uncomfortable. Like it's uncomfortable to sit with someone in that darkness.
Very much.
Yeah.
I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
I work with clients all the time on that. Um, can you meet your partner? Can you meet the people if you're a boss, can you meet your employees? Can you meet the people where they're at and not from a place of judgment, but
Right.
from a place of honoring where they're at. And that's where compassion comes in. That's where good leadership comes in,
Yeah.
and understanding where people they don't even know that they can't be there or it's not about mind reading, but true validation to know where someone actually is holding and having empathy to actually communicate in a way that they can understand. And then so they're not overwhelmed or dysregulated by what you're sharing. That's communication, right?
Yeah, and it's really an art form,
Yeah.
which can be learned. Anyone who's listening to this and like, okay, it's a learned skill. It's not,
Yes. You
yeah,
could learn it in group therapy we were talking about.
right. We were talking about that before we started recording, and it's yeah, I just keep going back to this, like, being human is so messy and it's so hard, but going back to what you just said, Mendel, pick your hard, which, like, again, not to say it from a patronizing place, but like, life is hard. Like, the challenges are there. It, you know,
When I say that life is hard, Lay, I'm speaking to you because
right,
you're sitting with me. And
right,
so you can take it.
right.
But the people listening, I'm not necessarily speaking to them.
Yeah,
I'm speaking to Lay, and you can maybe learn something from what I'm saying to her. But for you, you might need to hear something else. You might need to meet yourself where you're at, and you might be at a different stage. Uh, but yeah, I guess ultimately these truths are truths.
right.
Um,
Right, but we have to be mindful of how we're introducing those truths because different, again, different people are at different places, in their journey and their ability to their ability to receive this information, as you said, without getting dysregulated or overwhelmed. Can you, without giving away any identifying details, can you share an example of like how EMDR has, because you were saying before that that's a modality that you tend to lean towards with your clients. What can you share an experience of or like a breakthrough or how was it helpful for a client who was um, living with trauma?
one moment might be hard because healing is
No,
a
because it's a right, because
I would say, okay, well, let me tell you yesterday about the different, and it's not about, oh, I do millions of breakthroughs every day, but there's multiple mini breakthroughs in a day, and I'm sure that I can point to the micro, but I'm probably going to stick more macro on this one and stick to what I've seen in general
okay.
has changed for most people. So EMDR in the beginning helps people to start by getting in touch with their joyful, calm, regulated parts.
Mm,
And so in trauma healing, we have two balls, I guess you can call it. That's how I frame it. And you have the ball of trauma, and we're hoping to make it a little smaller, trauma response. And then we have a small ball of regulation, of joy, of adaptive, all the good things. And we want to expand that in your life. And so if the trauma gets smaller and the joy gets bigger, life will be much better. And you can work both ways. So if there's too much trauma, then we're going to need to expand the joy so that you can tolerate trauma processing. You can't even do real trauma processing, so to speak, that stage two of trauma healing, of really processing through it and letting it working its way out unless you have enough regulation. And so using EMDR, I help somebody connect to times that they felt calm or they felt joy, or they felt safe. And when they connect to that experience, those experiences, and we do many, and we also help them just regulate somatically in general, what they notice is as they start to feel these joyful feelings, they start to feel the opposite. They start to able for the first time to feel some of the real sadness,
mm,
pain, not trauma.
mhm,
Trauma is something that's stuck. It's different than healthy pain or grief. Healthy pain and grief we all need to feel. That's what makes us human. That's healthy. We need to feel joy. We need to feel pain. We need to feel sadness. We need to feel anger. But traumatic joy being narcissism or grandiosity or bipolar, that's traumatic joy, or traumatic sadness or traumatic anger or rage, let's say extremes are a sign of trauma. And so for the first time, they can feel into their sadness in a regulated space.
mm,
And so that's a breakthrough. That's honestly the first breakthrough that I have with most clients is that they feel opposites in that moment. They feel true joy and they feel true sadness or pain about whether the experience is no longer or whether that in itself, like a wedding, marrying someone off, it's so joyful and so sad because they're not, with me and metaphor, not there, still with us, but
right,
they're moving on. and
right.
and so that experience in helping people to see what emotions are and where they come from is honestly is my favorite breakthrough, more than even the trauma healing and working through the painful stuff, which in retrospect, that's what people appreciate and that's what they need.
Right.
That micro breakthrough in the beginning, it really sets the tone.
And I'm hearing something so profound as you're sharing this, which also like this is not how I remember EMDR being done when I did. Like I tried EMDR, I'll be honest with you, Mendel, I tried it one time 14 or 15 years ago and I did not like it and I never tried it again. And now I'm hearing you describe it this way and I was like, "What? That's." I went in and we immediately started focusing on the traumatic thing. Um,
Yikes.
right. So I'll just, I had a fear of driving basically my entire whole life. And then the day before I got my driver's license, my father's best friend was killed in a car accident. You can't make this stuff up. You cannot make this stuff up. So then I immediately I'm a twin. My twin sister and I got our licenses the same day. I handed her the keys. I was like, "Cool, you're driving." And then I moved to New York where I could take the subway everywhere for 5 years. So but I moved back to California and had to learn how to drive. And so I had an EMDR therapist try to work with me on the trauma but there was no setup. So what I'm hearing is so profound that we have to have, for trauma healing to happen, in order to feel safe to feel pain, grief, anger, which are all emotions we have to feel, right? We have to start with regulation and we have to start with feeling safe. So your process here, that's such a huge breakthrough that you can tolerate both things and like, wow, bring that on. Everyone should be able to feel that right away. Like that to me that's because that's one of the most profound pieces of healing is that you don't stop feeling the challenges don't stop. The grief still comes up, the sadness, maybe even about that very thing, but you're able to tolerate it. That's what right? And you're able
You're
to,
able to hold deeper feelings, larger feelings,
right, and to and to regulate through those
and
feelings.
to feel regulated while you do it. So I can hold a bigger feeling now than I could 5 years ago.
Right,
And it's just because, and it's not holding trauma per se. Although often when we work through trauma, we unlock our ability to hold larger feelings because
right,
trauma is minimizing or exaggerating either one, right?
right,
Our experience. It's not letting us to feel into that middle, which is where the healing is.
right.
Don't get me started about driving phobias and what that really means and how people misunderstand OCD and phobias. They get so stuck on the phobia that they lose what the phobia is trying to do and
Right,
how it's trying to help. The same
right,
thing we were talking about earlier. And when you understand that really, then we can help you to feel safe enough to do it. But also you can work through what's underneath the phobia.
right.
Um, Honestly, phobias was a big thing for me. I still do it, but it was like a big thing because I helped a couple people and they told like a lot right after I did EMDR and they told a lot of people and then people were like, "Oh, he's the guy that does
The phobia, your phobia
airplane
guy.
phobias and driving phobias and it's dude, phobias are the most complex." So, um,
Can we actually talk about that? Because I'm curious. I really don't know a lot about the complexity of phobias, and I also like, I'm just curious about what do you see as like maybe we have to go on a little bit of a more macro level, but what's going on underneath this, the phobia issue?
so what I've seen is phobias are this brain's brilliant way, but also kind of creative way of just projecting the fear into something. I've had clients with phobias that don't make any sense. I had a client that had a phobia of certain animals, I won't say, but and it was really random. It didn't make any. It's not like driving or something else. And what he found in our deeper work is that that animal represented evil.
Wow.
And that was a spiritual, religious projection of a phobia.
Wow.
Okay. That's a very deep level. And so him healing his spiritual, religious trauma and working through that on a deep level might release him from the frog phobia. But for now, he knows what it represents. He's not going to heal it. He's not ready to go there.
Mm.
He's not ready to go there, and he can honor that's a very deep idea, but he understands the projection. He doesn't sit there and look at okay, frogs. The animal was frog. It's not confidential.
Right.
It's just so like
Also, like,
peculiar.
people have phobias of dogs because maybe they were attacked by a dog or like
So those make more sense. Frogs is like just like,
we're
but
just,
yet
right,
when you look at the Jungian psychology and you look at the depth psychology, frogs actually represent the certain sense of darkness, but it
yeah,
can actually be transformed. Yeah, like the frog that the princess kisses the frog.
frog and then
So it
transform.
actually can be transformed. It's a very deep, a frog actually represents a deep klipa, I guess you could say. And yet at the same time, it can be transformed into. So I believe that when he heals his spiritual pain, his religious pain, then the phobia will go. And that's on a very deep level. On another level, with the driving phobia and being able to recognize whether it's safety or control and what those and how sensitive those things are, and then being able to work through those things on a deeper level. I'm not going to be able to do justice to the because it's so specific. I will say though that phobias are sourced the deepest. They're projected because the fear is so large, it's fear. So we have to work through fear, and we have to work through what's underneath fear, which is potentially anger. And
Mm,
if we work through what's potentially under that, then we may get to the sadness.
right.
Um, and so I kind of just work through, okay, let's be able to process through the fear in EMDR, then we'll process through so we have to know the stages. We try to jump to the sadness, we'll miss the phobia and or it'll get reprojected onto something else.
Right. Wow.
It's a little complex. I don't even know if it's so helpful,
No,
but
it is for me. Like I could geek out on
yeah.
this, we could, don't even get me started. We'll like be here for a long time. But I do, what I'm hearing and what I, kind of want the audience to take away from this is also like how nuanced of an approach healing is. and how it's so specific to the person and also who they're working with and the stage that they're in and what they're able to, I find that when people have gone through something super traumatic and then it's like, okay, let's sit down and talk about all the reason, all the stuff. And sometimes we just, healing isn't working for the person, not because it's not possible, but because they haven't found the right formula for them. Because people we're so unique. Sometimes I had this today. Somebody called the warm line asking for referrals. And I was like, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you three that I think could be helpful for what you're asking for. You're going to call the same way that if you had three referrals on a shidduch resume, call and
Yeah.
find out. Because I could think they're wonderful. You could think they're not for you. And it doesn't matter what I think ultimately. Ultimately, they have to be a good fit for you, right? Like you have to, it's that unique, but
That's compassionately. That's compassionate. Yeah, go ahead.
no, but part of it is what it keeps coming back to for me is what you said about this process of creating the regulation first. Because people can't they can't start to heal if they can't feel, and they can't feel until they feel safe to. And
They
I
don't have a window of tolerance,
there's
even
literally
if you want to get by like
okay, but
psychological.
what
If you
about
want to stay in that realm,
tolerance? Right, right,
I'm saying make it very psychological. I do believe
right,
it's also deeper, but yeah, there's no window of tolerance. It's
right,
tiny.
right,
So how can a couple heal in couples therapy if
right,
they don't have a window of tolerance with each of them?
right.
And so even if me as a therapist and I hold the space to regulate and they can just do it here, we need to actually help them to expand their ability. We could do it in couples work. Individual work probably first is better.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
but
I was really wondering, is one of us going to bring up the window of tolerance? My favorite topic. No, but
oh,
that's exactly, I think, could you in your words, Mendel, explain what the window of tolerance is
I'm
for,
just gonna, yeah, piggyback on what we were just speaking about. The window of tolerance is the middle. There's like three windows, and three levels. The middle level, and that's the level of regulation. That's the level of safety. That's the level where we feel calm, where we feel relaxed. We can just be. The top of the window might feel like joy, but if we get too high, it'll get heightened, and then we get into what we call the anxious window, the heightened window. And in that space of too much anxiety or too much dysregulation heightened, we won't be able to process. And if we're on the other side, lower down, we might feel really regulated, meditative. And once we get below into the lowest window, we're in the level of dissociation, of depression, of the word's not coming to mind right now, of shutdown. Let's just say call it shutdown. And that's numb. It's in your bed. It's slow.
right,
It's subtle, and many people live their whole lives in that level. They never get up. And so those people, we have to bring them up. We don't
right,
have to tell them to take deep breaths. Well, if they're going to breathe, they need to go,
right,
they need to increase the inhale. Everyone else needs to exhale. They need to inhale. And so that's the breathing metaphor. But so sometimes I have to bring people up,
right,
especially dissociated folks. And then there's the third level, which is where you have both. You're in
right,
freeze.
right,
It freezes. I'm heightened and I'm frozen.
right.
And those are harder to work with because you have to like thaw them out.
Right.
Um,
But that's the thing. I think that every person, and again, the reason I'm so happy we brought this up is because I do think that understanding the window of tolerance can allow people to have more compassion for themselves. If they kind of can, if they see it less of, oh, this is because I'm broken and incapable of handling my life, and
shame.
I'm
That's
just,
shame.
it's just, they're just in a shame spiral about how depressed they are or how chaotic they are, right? But if you could see it as every single one of us has our window for how much distress we can tolerate. And it's not that, right now your window might be this big. Your window could be expanded, but you can't focus on expanding the window if you're not in the window, right? Like you can't focus on that higher level of meaning making and connectedness. And like, as you're saying in couples therapy, if the goal is for the couple to be able to turn towards each other more, but their ability to handle distress with each other is so limited, like it's not happening. It's
It's
not
very
happening.
hard.
Right.
Yeah. And can I add even more compassion? I want
Please,
to add another layer.
let's layer it on.
Because somebody hearing this might be like, okay, but I'm still stuck in my shame. And the truth is that those parts of you, those trauma parts, whether it's shame that shuts you down and says, I'm no good, I can't heal, I'm broken. Those are those shame parts. Or whether you have an inner critic part, which is basically a cousin of a shame part and says, I'm no good, I'm terrible. It's the same, I would call them the same thing. Often in EMDR work, in the first phase, we have to actually do parts work. You must call it internal family systems work, or you could just call it structural dissociation or parts work on the dissociated parts, which is shame or the inner critic. And we'll actually have to first work with that part to understand it, understand why it's there, heal that part, which is a bit of trauma processing, but it's trauma processing for regulation. You can't regulate if you have a traumatized part that's not going to let you do that.
Right.
Those are those strong, intrusive parts, and sometimes they're scary or they're mean, or in some really dissociated clients, they can be almost separate from the person, and so we help people to so parts work is a key part in phase one of sometimes we can't even do trauma healing until we also process through those parts. And that's a little more sophisticated, but it's validating. And it's because so many people think, oh, I just need to regulate, but I can't, or this or that. It's like, no, there's actually parts of you. And that's why parts psychology, whether you IFS, if you don't like IFS, if it's structural dissociation, which is a scientific model, ego states therapy, these therapies are deep, but they're needed because if not, you're looking at yourself too simply.
Right.
Um, you mentioned the idea of people don't people are unique, and not only that, people don't like to be rubricized. Maslow says this. They don't like to be categorized. It's actually traumatic
Yes.
to be categorized because part of being human is our uniqueness with our beautiful soul and God-given uniqueness. And so when we're labeled in a diagnosis or anytime I give a label or anything, which I'm not a big fan of labels, but I need to because you need to have structure.
Right.
Um, it's in order to help, and it has to come from the label has to come from compassion to be helpful enough, to get close enough to the uniqueness. So we can, like a painting, we're going to give a description. That's Maslow gives this description. And first off, I'm a huge fan of Maslow's writings, and if you're asking what my latest passion project is, it's studying Maslow.
Really?
Um, yeah,
That's
that's
awesome.
where I'm at because his pyramid of needs is just like the
It's a tip of the iceberg.
tip of the iceberg of his writings, and and man, it's wonderful. So I'm loving his writings, and he talks about this idea of a person's uniqueness and how we have to balance that with this idea of calling to specific things and labeling and healing and doing all that work at the
Yeah.
same time.
Yeah. It's, as I'm hearing you say that, I'm thinking about one of the, on one hand, it can be such a relief to have the label, right? Like knowing, oh, I'm struggling with depression, I'm struggling with anxiety, this is bipolar, this is borderline, could be helpful because it gives you a target of where to go. But I
In the
do
beginning.
the beginning, but I do find that very often it's something that people feel that then become married to. This is who I am. Like I'm a big, huge fan, could geek out all day on attachment theory, but my biggest pet peeve is when people say to me, I have anxious avoidant attachment. I'm like, no, you don't. You have, like, yes, you do, but
Like, I've had to move away from that. I've had to move away from the attachment theory. I've had to move away from the model
because
because
how
it's traumatic.
people get married to it. And it's
You can
traumatic.
traumatize somebody like
Guys,
that.
right. And it's, I I'm a, I maybe have even said this to you in the past. I for sure said this in the Writing to Heal class that I am the unofficial president of the Dan Siegel fan club. Like if there was a fan club, I would be the president. And he talks about this a lot that, in his own attachment research, he has found that giving someone a label of a specific attachment style without the proper guidance on understanding how that attachment style came to be, and also that it's not your destiny. It doesn't mean that every relationship that you're going to have from now on is in that's not the point. but it can become very toxic to have an identifier, right? So like we have to balance that. It's so hard to balance. Um,
That's why any modality can be used to help and to harm.
right,
IFS could be used to heal in the deepest way, and it could create dissociation if someone uses it untrained. EFT as a couples therapy, I think of attachment focused, right? Couples therapy. I'm just gonna put it out in public. I did couples therapy in EFT and I found it semi-traumatic for myself because I felt like it was too much about the attachment and not enough about the individual.
right.
And I felt like I wasn't being understood in the complexity of my experience.
Wow.
And so that ended up being that way. And so I'm very wary of modalities, including EMDR. And I'm so wary of modalities because I know that if you become a religious observant of a modality, then you lose the spirituality sometimes of the point of it. And hopefully you can marry the two, the beauty of the modality and what the point of it is. And we can use many modalities to get to the what's underneath.
Right.
Um, yeah, I could probably die on a hill with that one. Um, I I'm serious.
Right there. No, I'll be right there next to you. It's very, I think that on one hand, it does give us a sense of certainty, right? If I do DBT and I learn all the DBT skills and I memorize the manual and I
Yeah.
follow all the steps, then and then when that doesn't happen, it's like, oh, I'm broken. This can't help me because, and I hear that a lot from people that they've invested years of their life into being hyper focused on a specific way to heal themselves. And then you lose that, you become rigid in your intellectualizing of the, right?
You're so stuck in the modality that you forget the whole point of healing. And it's like, yeah, I'm very passionate about it because it'll take you 10 times longer.
Right,
You get stuck for 25 years or 40 years trying to do one modality, but if you tried a few different things, and you committed to them. I didn't say just sprinkle around. I'm saying,
right,
yeah, no, try this. Now do
right,
this for a bit. Now
right,
try this, do this for a bit. I
right,
guarantee you the other stuff, your cognitive behavioral skills will develop. And you can go back to cognitive behavioral therapy. You'll be way more advanced than if
right,
you just stuck in that one therapy.
right.
But it feels uncertain. It feels scary. I get it. I didn't want to do EMDR.
As you said, right.
I still haven't, I still have my feelings about certain modalities that are so deep that I'm so hesitant to go into them.
Yeah,
I treat them with reverence and with awe and, psychedelics people speak about. And
right,
I've done that, some of that work, but I I do it in very titrated, careful
of course.
with awe and understanding of what level I need to be at to be ready to
Right,
do that. And I'm not ready for some of those things just yet.
right.
Um, Meaning I can go there, but it'll be sometimes too much of an experience. Will just blast you and won't, it'll be dysregulating as opposed to integratable or not as easy to integrate. It'll take me 10 years instead of a couple months. And that's not necessarily how we want to do it. So that's
Right.
my 2 cents on that.
I mean, I think it goes back to what we were saying before. Like there's no short, you can't circumvent how it's supposed to, like you can try to bypass healing in different ways. Okay, good luck with that because it's just going to come up somewhere else. And
Yeah,
trust me,
yeah,
like
can't spiritually bypass.
I've tried to spiritually bypass, right? Like I think I said this. We were both guests on Ellie Nash's podcast, and he kind of called me out on this when I hadn't he had me on when he had me on
Yeah.
the show, he called me out on this that like I actually very much did a spiritual bypass on my own trauma work by getting into suicide prevention. And the
Hmm.
first 2016, 17, 18, 19, 20, the first 5 years that I was doing crisis management, I was like, great, here's an outlet for me to put all of my effort and my energy into being able to help people heal. And I'm not even going to touch my stuff. And my stuff was kind of like bubbling up to the surface, but I kept being like, nope, too busy helping other people heal. And then COVID happened, and I couldn't get on a plane to go do more suicide prevention classes. And I was just in my house and I had nowhere to go. And then it was like, right. So I can really tell you, I've tried the spiritual bypass. It comes up, it will come up of it. Like you shove it down enough, it's not going to have room to go anymore. It's going to have to it just comes back up.
like, even if it doesn't impact you, everybody around
It
you
affects
can't
everybody.
stand it
Exactly.
because it's
Totally.
impacting your relationships. I
Totally.
always say, oh, when someone comes and says, honestly, I have no problems. My wife referred me here. Everything's great. Everything's great. Like, wow, everything's wonderful, but you're sitting on my couch.
Right.
Usually things are not perfectly wonderful unless
Right.
you're really growth minded and you're just looking for expansion. But that doesn't sound, you don't sound like you want to grow. So what are you doing here? And so they'll say, well, oh, tell me about your relationships. Oh yeah, my wife can't stand me. My kids think I'm a jerk, and my employees, they think I'm a tyrant. All right.
Right.
Okay, well, that might be a good place to explore and be curious about where we might be bypassing some of our wounds.
Right.
And so you can work with people in the opposite, like that have those,
Course. Right. But it's just, we gotta, I guess it comes down to we gotta meet people where we're
yeah,
at.
easier said.
Oh, way easier said. Mendel, before we wrap up, and I've been enjoying this so much, thank you so much for coming on. Um, do you have a message or like a last piece of wisdom to share with the audience? A message of hope, maybe.
Sure. I can't believe I have to say this. But healing is possible. I've watched people go from all the way from the end, all the way to from the beginning, which is in a trauma crisis center, all the way to living their best life, going through healing as a sickness towards healing the sickness towards moving to growth and expansion and living way beyond they can imagine. And healing is possible for everyone. We live in 2025. In the past 10 to 15 years, we have so much added that helps the previous 150, 200 years to actually work. Not that there wasn't good therapy before, but we have it and it's there. It's at your fingertips. And if you really struggle and you're complicated, I want you to know you are complicated. And that might take a little more time. And if you're not complicated, this might not take as long as you think. And so healing is really possible. It's very real and it happens all the time. And there's tons of people doing it and living better lives. And they're not gloating in your face because it's an internal work. But I promise you, they love their life. And I want that for you. Um, that's my message.
Well,
I also want to say that Lay does incredible work and Long Short Road, and I've participated in her workshops in person, and she helps so many clients, both navigating them and supporting them in many ways in their therapeutic process. I've worked with them, people in my practice, and so just a shout out to Lay, and I really appreciate you bringing me on here. I'm always selective about who I spend time with in these sort of settings. So I really appreciate it all.
thanks, Mendel. Thanks so much. It's so, it's so good to have colleagues doing such good work. It helps me. I feel so good about the state of the world when I'm looking around. I'm like, oh, we have these helpers who are helping. So thank you for being one of those people. And you should have a lot of hatzlacha in your practice and in your ability to really help people access that deep healing in themselves.
Amen, amen. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mendel. Thank you for tuning in to Heart to Heart. If you or someone you love is struggling, please know there is hope and help is within reach. Since 2019, the Long Short Road has been walking alongside at-risk individuals, offering trauma-informed programs, a non-emergency hotline, and a community that fosters healing. No one has to go through this alone, and we are here for you. Discover how the Long Short Road is changing lives. Visit www.thelongshortroad.com or email us at info@thelongshortroad.com to learn more. You can be part of this mission. Sponsorship opportunities for Heart to Heart are available. Honor a loved one, support your community, and help us make mental wellness resources accessible to those who need them most. Until next time, remember, love and connection are the greatest healers. This is Lee Yaffe reminding you, hope is here, healing is possible, and you are never alone. Together, we're walking this long, short road to a brighter future.